Hello everyone, and welcome. Today I wanted to go a little broader in our map exploration videos and content in general. We've gone through a number of maps about places in the Portland, Oregon area. We've done downtown, we've done the neighborhoods, we've done several parks. And in my non-map related videos, we are covering a book set in Oregon, mostly. So today, I wanted to give a general overview of the state. And thankfully, I was able to find a used, a rather old map of Oregon from the Oregon State Highway Commission. So it is primarily based off of drawing the highways and roads of the state, as well as major places that people would want to go. So cities, parks, forests, places like that. Before we open it, I'd also like to show the image on the cover, which is an image of Crater Lake, which is Oregon's first and currently only state park. The only national park. Oregon has quite a few areas that are within the national park system, but only one actual national park. It's Crater Lake, and in the middle of the lake, this is Wizard Island. It's quite a beautiful place. I might visit it on its own one of these days. So let us go to the main side of the map. So we can see here, although you won't be able to fully see because this map is long enough that it does not fit on the entire desk. But Oregon is a generally rectangular state, much more wide than it is tall. And we have a number of main roads that are in various slight differences from where they are today, and how they are today, mainly. The biggest difference that you can see is in the main east to west artery of the state, which is this highway here. I'm tracing from Portland all the way out east along the northern border of Oregon. And down in a southeastern direction to the border with our neighboring state of Idaho. And this is Interstate 84, created as part of the interstate highway system in the 50s. Mostly goes parallel to the existing U.S. Highway 30, extending from out east as far as Salt Lake City in Utah, and edging its way northeast in this direction towards the Columbia River, which is the main water thoroughfare in the state, which also it shares with the state of Washington for a large portion. And if you'll notice, I called this highway Interstate 84, which is the name that it has today and has had since 1980. However, I don't believe this will be visible from the vantage point of the camera, but this highway sign calls it by its old name, which is Interstate 80 North. It was originally designed to be a different artery of Interstate 80, which goes from, I believe it goes from New York to San Francisco. And then 80 North was designed as a branch going north to Portland instead of San Francisco. But in 1980, it was given the new number of 84, which it also shares with a separate Interstate 84 that goes through Connecticut, out on the East Coast. So it goes most of the way through Oregon to Portland. And then basically there are two main continuations of the highway. There is U.S. Highway 30, which still exists, going northwest, continuing the arc along the Columbia, heading northward, and then eventually arriving at the town of Astoria. And the other way, which is the slightly more common way for Portlanders to get to the coast, which is to take US 26, which goes all the way to Seaside and Cannon Beach, which are two other popular towns on the coast. The other major highway that exists here in Oregon is Interstate 5, or I-5. Which starts up near Portland in across the way from Vancouver, Washington. Goes through town. And instead of tracing the Columbia River, as did I-84, I-5 traces the Willamette River to start out. And curves all the way down, running parallel to what is signed here as US Highway 99 now, but also is now known as Oregon Highway 99. So it passed from the US highway system to the Oregon highway system. And it forms the western highway backbone of Oregon. There are a couple of other highways that I think deserve mentioning. Farthest on the west coast, farther west than I-5, is US Highway 101, which travels from Astoria. Well, really, it travels from Olympia, Washington, getting to Astoria. And it traces its way down the Oregon coast, past Astoria, Seaside, Cannon Beach, Manzanita, Nehalem, Wheeler, Rockaway, Garibaldi, Bay City, Tillamook. Of course, here it takes a fairly large inward route through Tillamook, Cloverdale, Nescoin, and then to the towns that are separate here. And I don't think the camera, again, will be able to see, but this is Lincoln City, Depot Bay, Newport, Waldport, Yachats, Florence, Reed Sport and Gardner, Winchester Bay, North Bend and Coos Bay, which function as the largest city in the southern coast, and are really the southern equivalent in that respect to Astoria. Cutting through Bandon, Langlois, Port Orford, Ophir, Gold Beach, Pistol River, and then finally to Brookings and Harbor, which are the southernmost towns on the coast. Eventually, 101 goes farther south to Crescent City and to farther south into California. The other north-south highways that exist, the major ones at least, are US Highway 97, which starts at Bakes Junction out near Mary Hill, traces its way through Grass Valley, and then begins to follow parallel of the Deschutes River. We have Madras as a main city, Redmond, Bend, and then from there, mostly smaller cities. Here we get easy access to Crater Lake National Park. And then to Klamath Falls, which is one of the major towns of Southern Oregon, and an easy access to the beauty of Klamath Lake, which is right near it, as well as the Klamath Mountains, which are far to the west. Going back up north, there is also a spur of 97, which is 197, which connects, instead of going to the ghost town of Shaniko and Biggs Junction, goes up to Maupin, Ty Valley, Dufur, and to the larger city of the Dalles. Lastly, for north-south routes, we have 395, which starts up near the Hermiston area. Goes through Pendleton, through Ukiah, Dale, down to Mount Vernon, and John Day, Canyon City. Down to Burns, a major town of Eastern Oregon. And making it through the high desert to Lake View and Goose Lake. And there are also much more in the way of west to east routes going from the ocean farther east. We've looked at US 30. We also have US 26, which starts, in this map it says starting from Astoria, but as of the 21st century, it starts at this junction at 101, goes to Portland, makes its way through the eastern suburbs to to Mount Hood, which is the tallest peak, the tallest mountain in Oregon at 11,245 feet. And the mountain is also home to Timberline Lodge, which was not the site of the actual filming of the Stanley Kubrick and Jack Nicholson movie The Shining, but it was where the exterior shots of the Stanley Hotel were taken, as opposed to the actual Stanley Hotel. From Mount Hood, 35 connects to Hood River, which is a beautiful resort town with easy access to good sailing and good windsurfing and kite flying along the Columbia River. But then we follow 26 down through the Warm Springs Indian Reservation to Madras, and then to Prineville, which is a major tech hub in the 21st century, primarily for, I believe, server farming and solar power generation. 26 then makes its way primarily west to east, joining up with 395 from Mount Vernon to John Day to Unity, and then joining up with US 20 to go over the border with Idaho. Now let's take 20 back, following the Malheur River out to Burns, out to Christmas Valley, to Brothers, and after Bend to Sisters, which is quite a beautiful small town. 20 continues inching north through Lebanon to Albany, Corvallis, and then eventually to Newport, along the Yaquina River. Of course, we see this offshoot of Oregon Highway 22, which leads to Salem. Now, all of those are important roads to know. But if we want to look deeper at Oregon as a state, roads only get us so far, and so superficially. All of these towns are towns on their own right. get a sense, especially with the density we see here, the density of towns along the coast, and the scarcity of the eastern portion, that we can generally divide Oregon into 4 main regions. The first one is the coast, which is generally defined as the areas from the Pacific Ocean all the way to the Coast Range, which is a stretch of mountains that goes roughly parallel with the ocean. And protects the more eastern regions of the state from some of the harshness of the weather from the ocean. In addition to the Coast Range, we have the Siskiyou and Klamath Mountains, which form the southern portion of the Coast Range, though technically separate ranges, but also providing a bridge over to the Cascade Range, which is a mountain range that stretches from Washington and actually I believe all the way to British Columbia in Canada, and making its way all the way down to California. And with these mountains, you get a pair of different effects on the climate and on the type of land you see on either side. Obviously, this is a mountainous region, so there are a lot of mountains like Mount Hood, Mount Mazama, which became Crater Lake once it erupted. But to the west of the mountains, you see a lot more arable land that is easy to grow crops on and has a lot of agriculture growing on it. And what we see here is the Willamette Valley, the valley caused by the Willamette River, which we covered back with talking about I-5. This is the primary breadbasket of the state. And protected by the Coast Range to the west, and In the Cascades to the east, we get a lot of pleasant land. And so with that comes a lot of people and a lot of institutions. So obviously Portland is a large city of over, actually just under 1 million people in the city proper. But when you include the suburbs and the portion of the general population area that exists in Washington, well over 1 million, if not more than 2, potentially 3 million. You also see the populated area extend to Salem, the capital, as well as to Corvallis and Eugene, which have a bit of a rivalry because they have the 2 main state schools, the main state-sponsored schools of the state of Oregon. Eugene has the University of Oregon, and Corvallis has Oregon State University. And all that is well and good, but with the Cascades being as high as they are, they block a lot of moisture into this western portion, meaning that the land to the east is significantly drier. It can support agriculture, but not on the scale that is possible in the Willamette Valley. You do have population centers. You have primarily along the eastern end of the Cascades, you have the US 97 corridor, and you have some large towns like Burns, Baker City, or LeGrand, or Pendleton. But they are fewer, they are farther between, and they have fewer people, frankly. Oregon has 5 congressional districts, so we have 5 people representing the state in the House of Representatives of the United States. Of those 5 congressional districts, is what they're officially called, this eastern portion of the state, the portion essentially pretty most of the land east of the Cascades, is a single congressional district, representing about 20% of the state's population. So 20% here, and 80% here. It's quite a stark difference, which also explains why so few roads exist here to connect the fewer towns and places. But it is still beautiful country. As arid as it is quite beautiful to visit. I always particularly enjoy visiting the portions east of the Cascades, as well as along the inland corridor of I-84, as well as up in the northeast along Oregon 82 up to the Wallowa Mountains, which are the main contenders, along with the Blue Mountains, for what Northeast Oregon has as far as the best mountain ranges in the state. They're quite beautiful places, especially near Wallowa Lake, near Enterprise and Joseph. I want to cover one more detail from this map, which is the lands that are federally owned. We obviously talked a lot about federal ownership in our video about Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, which is administered by the National Park Service, as well as other Department of the Interior services. And we see that here with Crater Lake, which is our main yellow national park here. Obviously, that's part of the Park Service. We also have two national wildlife refuges in Hart Mountain, which is a national antelope refuge, and Malheur, a national wildlife refuge in general. And the other three main areas in yellow here are Indian reservations. Reservations that are populations of Indian confederations and tribes that own and take part of the land here. So in the Blue Mountains, we have the Umatilla Indian Reservation, which is quite beautiful to drive through. There is the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. And there is the Klamath Reservation. Now, I believe there are more tribally owned lands elsewhere in Oregon. I believe near Grand Rod, along the corridor from the valley to Lincoln City. This area here is also tribally owned, but it's either small enough or happened recently enough to not make it on the map. The last thing I'll mention in this overview is a sense of what years this map could have come from. We've obviously covered a couple of examples of highways changing their numbers or changing how far they go. And I've been having difficult time pinpointing this down to a specific year, but with the calling of Interstate 84 as Interstate 80 North, we know that this was at least, at the latest from 1980. We can also see if this will focus. We can see a population number of 1,768,687, which is the U.S. Census population of Oregon from the 1960 census. So we know that this map came from the earliest 1961, likely to give it a year for that number to be published. And it would likely have last been used in 1970, when the new census population would be generated. So that gives us about a 10-year span when this map could have come from. That covers what I wanted to cover from this side of the map. But as we turn it over, we can see some additional information. Obviously, we have some writings from the Highway Commission. We have some mileage information, not only from various places around the country, but also a mileage chart between major destinations in the state and a significantly larger number of locations within the state, going from Albany to Tillamook here, and from Albany again to Woodburn. It's quite a beautiful grid of distances. I've been trying to find what the longest distance between two places has been. I believe somewhere there is a 6. Yes, from Hillsborough to Forest Grove is a 6-mile journey. Actually, no, this is a 4-mile journey from Springville to Eugene, I'm guessing. Yes, Eugene. So that's the minimum. Here is 487. Gotta look for anything that's above 500. 528. 547. 540 doesn't quite match. do I see anything that beats 547 as the maximum distance between two places on this chart, which is from Grants Pass to Enterprise, which would essentially be from the southwesternmost to northeasternmost place on this chart. If we had Brookings or Harbor here, that would probably beat it. But it doesn't look like we have it here. Oh well. In addition to that information, we also have some smaller insets. Hood River along the Columbia, Medford in the far south of the state, Roseburg, southwest central, Klamath Falls, which we saw, Eugene, which has the University of Oregon, and then Salem, which is the state capital. We also have two maps of Portland City proper. We're seeing downtown, the parks, and some various neighborhoods before. And we also have the corridor from Portland to south of Salem, done in better detail than the general map could provide. And lastly, we have a continued map of the states beyond Oregon, states and lands, really. Because not only do we have connections to Washington, Idaho, Nevada, California, but also to Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and to Baja California and Sonora, New Mexico. There's probably more that this map can tell us. But for now, this will do. To end this off, we have a beautiful view of the coast. Not 100% sure where this is. But here we have it. That is Oregon. I hope you've enjoyed our tour of the state. And thank you all for watching. And I hope to have more explorations of Oregon, both in these map covering videos as well as in future readings. thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.